Great. Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to the session today. My name is Emily Schudel. I'm a first-generation Canadian settler, and my parents were born and raised on the traditional territories of the Potawatomi and Peoria nations in what is now the state of Ohio. I myself was born and raised on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4, located on the territories of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabeg, Dakota Lakota, and Nakota people, and the homeland of the Métis and Michif peoples in what is now called Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And I'm grateful for the past 17 years to have been an uninvited visitor on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen, the Songhees and Kosapsan, and the Wasanich people. And I continue to reflect on my role and the role of my ancestors in colonial practices in Canada and the US, and on my responsibilities to Indigenous people and the land which they have called home for time immemorial. As for the work that I do, I'm an instructional designer in e-learning and open education, and the chair for the Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning at Camosun College in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I should qualify that the instructional designer in open education is my personal designation. There is no open education office at Camosun, and I think of this as one way to elevate the work that we are doing in open education by making it more explicit through resistance, as per our keynote that we heard yesterday. So that's who I am. As I go through the presentation, I'd really like you to introduce yourselves into the chat if you can. Interested in who you are, where you come from, but also if your institution has run open education recognition or awards events, or if you've thought about it, things like that. We'll come back to some of the challenges later as we go through the presentation. So please feel free to introduce yourselves so that I kind of know who's here and so that we know who each other are. During the session, these are the learning outcomes from the presentation proposal, just to explore how one small Canadian institution with no formal education office recognized 41 faculty members for their work in open education. Learn how you might be able to initiate similar recognition events at your own institution, and to gather tips from lessons learned around how to make an event a success. And none of these things are going to be big, huge, groundbreaking ideas, but just some things to kind of consider and think about if you're thinking about doing this. Just to give you a sense of who Camosun College is, we are a community college founded in 1970, so we're not that old, although I often think 1970 was only 30 years ago, and in fact, it's a little longer than that now. We have over 14,000 students and 160 programs. We have 2 campuses and some satellite campuses. We run courses primarily in person, but we do have some online and blended courses and programs as well. We also have over 400 faculty members in 2 different faculty unions, and absolutely no good way of finding out who is doing open education or zero textbook cost work at the college. And just to give you a sense of the pictures here, this picture here at the top right is of our Natsamat, our Indigenous gathering place building on one of our campuses. And in the center is what's called the Young Building. It's one of the older buildings on campus. We used to be a normal school back in the day. So we've been, the campus has been around for a while, but only as a community college for about 50 years now. When we think about our history with open education, many faculty at Camosun, and I'm sure this is a story that many of you are familiar with, have been working on adopting, adapting, and writing open textbooks or moving to zero textbook cost for many years off the sides of their desks. But only some people knew some of what was going on. In 2019, we received Open Sustainability Grant funding from BC Campus, and hopefully some of you are familiar with BC Campus. And we used it to fund 7 faculty-driven projects to adapt, adopt OER, or to move to zero textbook cost. And I was the project manager. And I'm just realizing I'm going to put a link in the chat to this presentation in case you are interested. That is available to you. So this Open Sustainability project was launched in early 2020. I'm sure all of you remember what happened in March of 2020. So the project somehow succeeded. At that time, I was a full-time instructional designer in e-learning at Camosun College. And it was a very harrowing time, as we all know, and all of us who were working during that time know, moving faculty to teaching online, faculty who had no idea how to teach online. But for some reason, I felt that this was a priority. So I really pushed, as faculty settled in, I pushed back to the faculty and said, let's get back to this work. And then we just kind of worked on it for the next few years. We had some extensions from BC Campus because they recognized the issues we were facing, since they support post-secondary institutions across the province. And we did wrap up the project successfully in spring of 2022. But it wasn't just the projects that came out of that. We also started advocacy work at the college around open education. We had done some in the past, but this was more intentional. So I started to visit departments to talk about what open educational resources were. I ran a survey to find out what people knew about open education. I began engaging with the student society and things like that, just to make sure people understood what open education was and to find out who was doing what. Also began to work with librarians because they are very much invested in the zero textbook cost model. So we have instituted that more intentionally as well. In 2023, we then ran an Open Education Week event series more intentionally than we had in the past, and we did that again in 2024. So just trying to get out there more so people can see what's going on and to understand what the advantages are to faculty and to students. Finally, where we are now. So now we have what we call, or what I call, an Open Education Zero Textbook Cost Advocacy Team. Originally, it was called a task force. Our previous Vice President of Student Experience, who left the college last fall when the Student Experience Division was dissolved, advocated for a task force on open education. It was really great to have a VP in my court around open education. She left, but now I have a new director in the area I work in who is also a huge advocate. So she's jumped on board with this. So now we have this advocacy team. It includes people from across the college, faculty, the library, student society, the ombuds, the bookstore, all kinds of people who have a vested interest in supporting this work for a variety of reasons. Really happy to have the bookstore on board because I missed part of Haley Babb's conversation about advocacy. This is very interesting to me, but the piece that she talked about with regards to inclusive or equitable access models for bookstores is in my mind right now because they are starting to approach Canadian bookstores, and our institution has been approached as well. So I need to learn how to push back against that. And it's really great to have the bookstore on board with Open Ed in this process. Zero textbook cost is also in our strategic plan as a metric to meet flexibility for student outcomes. When that was put into the plan, I was tasked with gathering a list of courses and programs that are zero textbook costs to find a baseline metric for that. And of course, as I said before, there is no way to know what's happening at college. It's not in our registration system. It's not in the bookstore system. We don't yet have a syllabus archive. We are working on that right now. So what I had to do was email the people I knew who were doing the work, and then I had to contact all of the chairs at the college and develop relationships with them so that they could reach out to their faculty. And I came up with a baseline list of about 150 courses at the college that are using open educational resources and or are zero textbook costs. So there's a couple of different metrics there. That is not the accurate number by any means. And so one of our tasks in the next year is to try to figure out how to make gathering that data a little bit easier for me, but also to make that data available to students so they can make more informed decisions when they are registering for courses. So yes, there's no easy way to know who is doing what. And that's frustrating for me because if I want to bring people together to do peer advocacy, peer support, it is challenging to bring the right people together, but it is getting easier because although quite frankly, it all rests in my brain and nobody else knows. So I have to figure out how to get that information out there. I also send out a more or less bi-weekly open education news and stuff newsletter to the college, well, to a list of about 80 people at the college. So it's growing every year. Every time I meet with somebody, I say, hey, can I add you to my list, and add them to my list. And I connect with people regularly and go to department meetings still. I have to start doing that again this fall now that startup is over. But that kind of work's really important just to keep people engaged in the conversation. But recognition is, I feel, a really important part of advocacy. To get the word out about open education, we decided we needed to celebrate what was already happening and to show others what is possible. I take this from a session I went to yesterday as well, and I always think about that as celebrating the small wins. Faculty members will often think that, well, I don't make my students pay for course materials. What's the big deal? And it is a big deal. And it should be celebrated, and people should talk about how did you do that? How did you move from a traditional textbook to open educational resources or zero textbook cost using library resources? It sounds, well, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. So having that celebration where we can both recognize the work that's being done, but then also create those conversations is really important. So the awards. The premise, Camosun College faculty have been engaging in open education work for many years with no formal support. They do the work off the sides of their desk with little to no recognition, even from within their own departments. In 2023, we started this off. There were some things that happened at the college that made me go, we need to recognize somebody doing open education work. And so we awarded one faculty member. We chose one faculty member with a certificate for his work developing an open textbook. And there is a link to this open textbook in this slideshow. It is an introductory biology textbook, a Canadian edition of an American version of the textbook that he adopted about 10 years ago and has been continually updating ever since. He just retired this year, so he's now no longer at the college, which is unfortunate, but his work remains because all of the sections of that course have adopted that textbook. So we wanted to recognize the work that he did with one of his colleagues. And then in 2024, so this last spring, we recognized 41 faculty members. And the way I put it was who have made profound contributions to open education at Camosun College, either individually or through a program approach, and demonstrated an impact on student learning and student costs by utilizing, designing, or adapting open resources in their instruction. I want to emphasize always that it's not just about costs. I know that that is an important metric that gets the ear of our leadership, but there is so much more that goes along with this. I want to make sure that that's recognized. So this is a picture of some of the people who were awarded a recognition award this year. It's a very small number of the people who were given awards. You'll see they're holding certificates. We had certificates made for them. And then a number of other things happened that I'll talk about in a minute. So as I said, the first year, the one award we presented, it was tagged on to our Teacher Recognition Awards ceremony at the end of April. It was a very loose set of criteria and tight timelines because I made the decision to do this quite last minute. And we only gave one award, but I knew we needed to do more. So the second year this year, during Open Education Week, we did the award on the Friday, so at the end of the week. It was an in-person ceremony specifically for the Open Education Recognition Awards. We applied for funding for BC Campus, who were funding events during Open Education Week last year. And we also made it about zero textbook cost and awarded entire programs as well as individuals. There was some institutional communication. We got a press release. Unfortunately, it happened at the same time as something else was being given press release. So we didn't get a lot of notice, but we did send out a press release about the event and write-ups about all the recipients. And faculty received certificates that they are framed and they can hang on their wall, things like that. I also asked for nominees, but I ended up selecting most of the folks because I knew what people were doing and people didn't nominate. So that's a challenge that I'm going to be talking about in a bit, is what we're going to think about differently for this year. I, or the few nominators that we did have, wrote short blurbs about each person, program, and project so the people in the room could hear what people were doing. And we had a slideshow running at the same time that we can now use for promotion outside the event. We also had posters up around the room. So we have an admin person in our office who's amazing at design, and she designed a bunch of posters to put around the room about open education, open textbooks, things like that. And we produced swag. So the funding we got from BC Campus was used for catering, but also to help us produce swag. So I actually created buttons. I've never created buttons before. That was fun. And we had bookmarks, keychains, bags, things like that people could take away with them. So again, our admin person designed those. We're very lucky. We have a makerspace. So for basically nothing, we were able to make keychains using the 3D printers. The bags were the biggest cost, but they were actually pretty low cost when you buy them in bulk. That wasn't too bad. We had our printed motto, our logo on them. So that was a lot of fun. Swag definitely does matter, Alan. And then BC Campus published a reflection post because we got the funding from BC Campus. I wrote a reflection post on the awards celebration. So again, we got a little bit more press out of it there. So next for us, we are going to keep the awards going. We're going to do it again during Open Education Week 2025. We will continue to keep it simple. We did not vet, kind of implied that before, but we didn't vet nominations. Basically, anybody who nominates gets an award. In just a sec, I'll put the slide link in the chat again. Anybody who gets nominated, as long as it kind of meets the loose criteria, will get an award, because it's not about winning, it's about recognition. Also, I know from applying for awards how onerous that is for faculty to have to fill out applications or get nominees to support them, things like that. So I don't want to make it onerous for faculty. I want to encourage them to do the open education work, not have them spend all their time filling out application forms and things like that. So I don't want to put more on their plate. It will continue also to be about advocacy, especially since leadership attends the event. If you tell deans that their faculty are receiving an award and there's going to be a ceremony for it, they like to come and then they learn more about open education, and I can schmooze a bit with them, or others can schmooze with them. And it also can encourage other faculty members to invest in the work. If they see their colleagues doing it, then they can maybe jump on board as well. I'm working on doing longer write-ups for the award recipients on the blog that we have in our Schudel area, our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. So I have some of the links to those stories here. That's always fun. I interview the recipients, and then I produce their story of their journey in open education. The barriers continue to be money, and I'm sure that's going to be, everybody's going to have that barrier. We need to have a budget if we're going to do something. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you do want to have something for a celebration. Another huge barrier is finding out who is doing what. I know now that there are some programs that are working on going to zero textbook costs, so I want to flag them. And maybe get them on board with awarding. Maybe there's a special award for moving to zero textbook cost. I don't know yet. And then encouraging others to nominate. I'm really, my evil scheme this year is to work with my director to encourage deans to nominate, because I think deans need to know what their faculty are doing. I'm not convinced deans always know what all their faculty are doing. So maybe they can find out what their faculty are doing and nominate them for open education awards, and that would be really cool. And in general, recognition across the college for this work is challenging. It's hard to keep it in front of mind. It's in front of my mind, but for me to kind of keep it in the front of mind of people across the college and in front of leadership throughout the college, throughout the year, is very challenging, because we have a lot of issues, as all post-secondary institutions do. There's budgetary issues, there's workload issues, there's all kinds of things that challenges that we face. So as we come to the last 5 minutes of the presentation, I just have a few recommendations for folks. Keep it about recognition and celebration. Don't think about who is better at open education or zero textbook costs than other people. Those are our small wins, is recognizing the work that people are doing towards zero textbook costs, towards creating flexibility for students, maybe even encouraging them to go into open pedagogy and really creating a better way of assessing students. That's also an evil scheme of mine, is to integrate this into assessments. Have a formal but not too formal process for nominations, starting earlier because I started late last year and I'm starting right now to engage with leadership because the awards are at the end of March, or at the end of the first week of March. But I need to engage now to get this in the leadership's ear and then just keep pushing it for the next several months. Continue with the celebration event and work on more targeted and intentional outward communication. I really would like this to be, I'd like the community to know what's happening at the college, encourages more people to come to Camosun if they know that students are going to get free textbooks or whatever it is, to encourage them to come here. Plus, the idea that faculty can contextualize their resources by adapting open to a Camosun context, I think should be also celebrated. Find ways to invite students of programs and instructors to attend. I need to do a better job of outreach to students to encourage them to come. Continue to find sponsors to provide space, catering, swag, and we will be applying for BC Campus funding again this year. And one of the ideas I had for this March was to have a gallery walk with posters showcasing some of the work, because people have been saying, can we see the work that people are doing? And so that would be a nice thing to just have around the room, is to have some posters, have people standing at them talking a little bit about the work that they do. Involves a little bit more planning, but we just did that last week for another event and it worked really well. So I think then those posters could be reused for advocacy. So it's not a one-shot deal. And I think it would be a nice way to showcase the work that's being done in a different way. But you can still do things on a limited budget. Even without catering or swag, you can still provide certificates and have a space to present and speak and encourage conversation. I think those are pretty low cost items. If you can book a room and have people in it and talk, that's a big way to do it. And I think the certificates are great because they encourage people that this is something that is meaningful. I can hang this on my wall. I can show people what I've been doing. So I don't underemphasize that particular piece. So boom, look at that. I got through it. So I just had some questions for you the last few minutes we have together. Wondering what ideas that I've presented here you might implement, what might be possible for you at your institutions, or maybe if you have some challenges or what other ideas you have or any questions that you have for me. I'm just opening the floor now to any comments or questions. Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul.
Hi,
Hi,
Emily.
Alan.
This is really good. It has such a big impact. And I know when I started running, awards are nice. Like it's great to get this. And your points about making the nomination easy is an ongoing struggle, because people will feel like, oh, that's too much, or my work isn't worth it. And so, but I have to tell you, like when I talk to people, like just getting nominated is really more meaningful than I even estimated. And probably for you, like you get a lot because you learn so much more about what's going on at campus, and then it surfaces things that normally wouldn't get as widely known. So I think running a local awards program is totally fantastic. I'm trying to find a way to have like some ongoing, like smaller levels of just giving credit and thanks to people who support the work, because they don't always get the awards, but they're key players in your library and in your teaching and learning centers that enable this. And so I'm trying to find a way to do smaller scale ongoing recognition that maybe could feed the larger awards process.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's really good about recognizing other people that do this work. As we did recognize one of our librarians at the awards event as well. One of the things we do is whenever I write a story from an interview, we put it on our campus newsletter. So it goes to everybody in the campus and they see those stories. And they do read them because I see the uptick on my WordPress site. It's like, oh, look, everybody's reading the stories right now. So that's a small way, is to have a little blog post that you can promote if you have a campus-wide email or newsletter. I think that's a small way to recognize that on an ongoing basis as well. Just one idea.
Okay, everyone, we are actually at time, so we'll need to stop. So I'm going to stop the recording